This episode of the Misdirected Mark podcast is brought to you by Wayward Masquerade and their forthcoming Dragon Baggins Kickstarter.
This is the Misdirected Mark podcast, a podcast about gaming, game mastering, and entertaining you, our listeners. We are explicit, you have been warned, and I'd like to thank Mike Willard for letting us use his music on our show. Now let's pick up those mics and get on with this thing.
Why, yes. Let us pick up those mics and get on with this thing. And on this episode of the Misdirected Mark podcast, we're talking about ennui. What happens when you've lost that love and feeling? Whoa, that love and feeling. When you've lost that love and feeling for the game, and it's gone.
Doo-doo, doo-doo, doo-doo.
And with that, my name is Chris.
And I'm Phil.
And I'm Old Man Logan.
I'm Nikki.
Yes, Nikki is here with us once again. We're going to be here this week and next week for my birthday, which is very exciting. Thank you, Nikki, for having us here. And then we'll figure out what we're doing after that. Maybe we'll be here, maybe we'll be somewhere else. But with that, I will say, Phil, buddy, old pal, what is going on?
I'm plugged into the wrong thing.
Yeah?
Yeah, I don't have any headphones.
Oh, I'm sorry, man.
Nah, I plugged into my laptop like I was doing a solo recording. I didn't plug into the board, so I didn't hear anything for like the last few minutes.
Well, I mean, it's cool, right? Like, you can still hear, though, right?
It's fine. I mean, if you're going to do the workshop bumper, you're on your own on that one.
Sure, man. I'll be like,
workshop.
Yeah,
I can't hear it, so. Yeah.
Do you want to just hand me your headphones?
Yeah, sure.
I'll just plug them in.
Sure. Look at that right there on the... I don't know if it actually...
Oh, we'll make
it. We've had some questions about whether it reaches or not.
Push the, push
That's
the thing.
awkward.
Nope, doesn't reach.
Just move the board.
Yeah, no, I'm without headphones.
Can you
It's
slide the
fine.
board?
No, we're already in the mid-show. It's fine.
Proceed forward.
Yep, it's good.
Tell me
I
what's
can go
going
without
on.
headphones.
Yeah. What is going on, man?
Nothing. Post QCC dropped. Ate a bunch of Chicago mix.
Thank you, Eric Simon.
Thank you, Eric Simon.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can thank you, Eric Simon, because in the middle of my drop, I binged the end of Narcos and finished off 2 bags of that Chicago mix. So not exactly a high point for me, but sure. I mean, Narcos was great. 2 bags of Chicago mix over 2 nights. Maybe not my best decisions, but fucking Chicago mix, man. I can't stop once I pop that thing open. I hid the 3rd bag.
Well, that's good. You gonna save it for a rainy day?
I'm going to try not to remember I have it.
Well, I mean,
I'd like to stumble on it one day and just be like, oh, there it is. And then I'll eat a fucking bag of Chicago mix.
I mean, you know what you could do? You could pop it open and put it in like a bunch of other like smaller bags and then
and
hide
eat
them.
it while I'm like, I'm the reason why.
Would you
I'm
like-
the reason why in New Jack City, those guys all had to be naked when they were cutting all the cocaine.
Oh,
like that's
yeah.
the problem.
I
Like
see.
I'll eat it as I'm cutting it. So
That
no.
makes sense.
I don't have any high hopes for that. Anyway, so dropped, watched Narcos, finished Narcos. Saw the bad news about the Narcos scout director, and then
Oh, please tell that story because you told it to me. I was like, that's fucked up.
yeah, well, Narcos season 4 is going to be in Mexico, and they sent out the scouting directors to start looking for locations, and they sent out. And the guy was pretty experienced too. He had done Sicario and a few other things in Mexico, but they found him in a car completely shot up.
That's insane.
Yeah. Well,
That's
he wandered into
legit insane.
I think Juarez, which is not really a super safe place. In fact, if I remember correctly, he was not far from where Cartel, the role-playing game, is set. And bad stuff. So, I mean, all seriousness, like that guy got killed scouting locations in Mexico. Like that is pretty terrible. So anyway, I did that. That's and when I played Blades, we played Blades on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that went actually pretty well. I posted some new insights about the Devil's Bargain, which we can talk about at the end of the episode. But anyway, Blades was good. Had a good time. I like where our storyline is going. And where it's kind of focused, which has a lot to do with workers' rights on the docks and unions and shit like that. So, yeah. So that's going good. That's about it. What about you, Nikki? What's going on?
Work is finally starting to settle down for September, and on Friday I had this message sent to me in a professional Slack channel I'm in, and somebody was like, "Hey, I think I can make your Friday a little better." And I was like, "What?" So he tells me that someone he knows couldn't go to this one conference that my work wasn't going to send me to because of money, and that I was going to get a free ticket to it. So now I get to go to a conference in Minneapolis at the end of October that I didn't expect to go to, and I'm super excited about it. Super fun.
Nice.
So that like made my
Cool.
week. So travel arrangements for that were this week, and kind of just getting back into the regular swing of things. What about you, Bob?
I am tired. I started night shift this week again. Only a 2-week run, and then I'll be off for a little while again. But I didn't transition properly. Not my fault, but it just didn't work out, so I didn't get the proper sleep going into it. And I'm just kind of, so I'm dragging a little bit. But other than that, I finished up another proofing thing for Third Eye Games. So I got some stuff done for Aloy, and played that game with Phil.
Blades in the Dark.
Yes. Blades in the Dark. And that's cool. And yeah, man. And now we're doing a show.
We are, in fact, doing a show.
And, hopefully if anybody needs spoons, we're handing them out.
Yeah.
And,
It's always good to give spoons.
always. How about you, Chris?
So, let me see. I picked up a little bit of work from John Arcadian. I finally got started on the thing from Claire Hoffman that I'm working on for her, which is for Encoded, actually. So there's that. What other work things
Oh,
am I
that came
doing?
in?
Yeah, me and her started talking. Like, it'll be... that's mostly on me, right? Like, I have to lay that out, put that together, so...
Yeah, do we have a due date?
Not yet, because it all got sketched back. I mean, it'll probably take me like 2 or 3 days, maybe a day, if I actually just sit down and do it to finish it. But I'm doing that. I'm working. I had a really lovely conversation with Bridget Hughes from Wayward Masquerade last night. That's an interview that will be out sometime soon. She's a fascinating person. I hope that everybody enjoys that as much as I enjoyed recording. It's one of my favorite interviews I've ever done for the Lounge. So that's saying something, because I've interviewed frickin' everybody at this point.
Seriously.
I'm also doing work for her on the Wayward Masquerade website for the Dragon Baggins Kickstarter that's coming in October. So those are the 3 things that I kind of got going on right now. Editing podcasts. We had James Narcos on the show on Down with D&D, so that just came out today. You'll see that all over the feeds tomorrow, at least the publicizing of it tomorrow. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. I've been trying to find a job. Applied for a bunch of jobs again today. Wrote some cover letters and resumes. It's always good. Hanging out and talking with Drew Smith, because secret weapon of the show, Drew Smith. It's always
Another
always good to keep in touch with him. So thank you, Drew. I hope you're listening. If you're not, I get it. I mean, you'll probably hear this in like a month, and you'll be like, "Yay, it was me again," because he gets like that when we talk about him. We were having that conversation. Like Drew's like, "I always miss you guys so much," and then you mention me, and I get all excited.
I wound up chatting with him too about Blades in the Dark.
Yeah. I mean, he's interested in playing that game. I'm sort of interested in playing it again too, but I don't know. Like I'm working my way back towards it. Although we're gonna start playing Dungeon World on Monday nights in that Monday night group that I have, because he's in that group. So that's pretty much what I've been doing. So let's move on now to announcements. So for those who didn't realize or didn't know, Hannah Schaefer was kind enough to let us re-release her podcast with her sister Alana that's called A Games People Play. They explore different social situations and circumstances from the lens of how they can be approached and analyzed like games, and how it can inform game design. I have completely paraphrased that from Rob Aberzado, since he did a much better job of explaining it than I would have. So thanks, Rob. I appreciate that. I hope you're blushing now, because I always try to do that. Do we have any other announcements that we want to throw out there? I mean, Whirlwind Millionaires in production now, for sure.
It's in layout.
It's in layout,
Yeah.
yeah. That's
It's
what
not in production.
Yeah.
It's in layout.
It's in layout, so that's a thing.
It's close.
The art order for Love and Justice is...
Yep, I saw that too.
The art order is nearly done, and Meg's on board, so we will have more Megan Dornbrock art
Nice.
to go with
Always a
Love
good
and
thing.
Justice.
Pretty sweet.
Pretty excited about that.
We also had a meeting about Avalon last night, and it looks like the Kickstarter is going to be early next year.
Yes, that seems to be settled on, and we're actually underway. We're starting to hunt for artists, and we're going to get a Kickstarter page in draft and all that stuff.
And as things about that come and pop up, we will start releasing teasers and things like that for you folks out there that are interested. Well, that's, I guess, all the announcements that we have for you folks. We're going to move on now to an ad. As soon as this thing pops up on my screen. I don't really have ad transition things, do I? Do we have an ad bumper? Like, I have the thing that says ad bumper. Should I press it? Should we find out?
Yeah, do it.
Is it?
Forgot all about that. In the wilds of New Zealand, an old creature has been discovered anew. These cuddly winged creatures have been fluttering in many places, but today we look at their habitation of the Kermadec Islands.
We were alerted to their presence by the people of Raoul Station on Raoul Island.
We were, and these dragon baggins were far more docile and friendly than the history of these creatures would show.
They would come up to you and spit dice from their bellies into your hands, and then nuzzle your hands with their soft microfleece hides.
We didn't see any of the ancient drac packs, but there were some of the mini dragons hanging from the dragon baggins and on other areas of the island.
One of the most fascinating moments was when the tide was low and many of the dragon baggins would make their way to Lav Rock, which is submerged most of the day. There they would congregate, clean one another with their soft wings, and trade dice with one another in what we've determined was a bonding experience.
Yes, and as they finished their ritual, they would take off into the sky and fly to another one of the islands where they would rest for the evening.
Next time in our look at dragon baggins, we'll follow them to the Bay of Islands and learn where they get their dice from.
All information about Dragon Baggins in this ad may or may not be fictional, but we can say for sure that Dragon Baggins are coming to Kickstarter in October from Wayward Masquerade. Also, as I mentioned earlier, I had a lovely chat with Bridget, and we recorded that, and it'll be coming out as an episode of The Lounge in early October. And as I mentioned before, she was one of my favorite interviews ever, and I'm really looking forward to sharing it with all of you. Look for that, as I said, in October.
Workshop! Go to the workshop! Do the workshop thing with all the workshop is! And come on, workshop! Workshop! Aye, my voice is not as strong as Phil's.
Alright, so tonight we're going to talk about something that happens to every gamer. It's natural, it happens to a lot of gamers, it's nothing to be worried about, and there's this pill that can really help.
What are we talking about tonight? What did I get myself
Not
into?
that thing.
1 in 5.
Not that thing. The thing that happens when you lose interest in your game or campaign.
Oh, that thing. Sorry, I thought we were talking about that other thing. That is not the acronym for a company that we own, right?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
You
Cool.
don't even come close to owning that.
Wow.
Are you kidding? Do you know how much money they've made on that? That thing's like the holy grail of drugs.
Oh, that.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. It
Yeah.
seems like the holy grail of drugs, right? So anyways, tonight we're going to talk about when we realize that we no longer love the game or the campaign that we are playing in. We're going to cover how it can happen and what you can do to deal with it. But first, we need to understand what this means and why it's a problem. So, hit me with a definition panda.
Yeah. So the tricky part here is there's no official term. Like there's no common term in gamer terminology for this feeling, and we all know it. Like we all have this thing where we're just kind of done about done about the game you're playing, the campaign you're in. So to kind of coin a term, I came up with game ennui.
Game
Right?
ennui.
Yeah. So ennui is defined as a feeling of utter weariness and discontent resulting from a lack of interest or boredom. That's pretty much, I think, the right feels for what we're talking about when we're kind of done with a game, done with a campaign kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So anyway, we'll use it for tonight. Game ennui then is that feeling of discontent we have with a game, a setting, or a campaign. That's going to be our working definition for tonight. So it's like I said, it's a feeling where we don't care if we keep playing this game or not, or we just don't want to play it any longer. It's not so strong as in like F this, I'm out of this game, or these rules are stupid. It's not that strong of a reaction. A lot of times we have those things where we try a game and we're like, ugh, those rules are terrible, or those rules are terrible for me. Mm-hmm. This is more like you've been playing this game and then suddenly you don't really care whether you play it again or not. You don't really care if there's another session or not. Okay. And often what that means is that at its root, ennui comes about when our feelings change for what we're playing. And it can happen in a single session. I mean, it can happen during a session, it can happen between sessions, or it can happen over multiple sessions. But something's changed, and our expectations about what we're playing are no longer met. So there's something about the game that just doesn't do it for us anymore. And when that occurs, that difference between expectation and experience reveals to us how off we are, and it creates that kind of longing, that ennui. And so this sounds a bit like burnout, but burnout, which is also actually kind of a decent term, but burnout has the connotation that we've overdone something. Like, I'm burned out on, I don't know, Fate.
Sure.
But it really sounds more like I've played a shit ton of Fate, and I just don't want to play any Fate again for a little while. That's more like burnout.
Yeah. I like that game, but I just need a break.
Yeah, that's more like burnout. Ennui is more like, hey, you want to play some Fate?
Super indifferent.
Yeah, super indifferent. Yeah. All right, so with game ennui, we don't necessarily have to feel like we've overdone something. Like, it just is. And we don't know when it's going to kind of creep up on us.
So part of the problem with it is that we don't have an emotional connection to the game anymore. And as a GM, this means that things like prep become incredibly daunting. You stop really wanting to spend the time that it takes to run the game and make it enjoyable for your players.
It's true. As a player, it also means you're no longer interested in playing the game. Like, you show me, like, at least I'm here with my friends, maybe, and that's kind of it. And really, the bottom line is that once ennui sets in, playing the game costs you spoons rather than gaining spoons, and that's not what we want from our play experiences at the table. I mean, this is supposed to be a recreational hobby.
When that happens, you end up with players who stop showing up, creating excuses, dropping out of games. So we look to understand what can cause this ennui and what to do when it occurs. And so you can try and help figure out what to do with your current game, or when it's time to kind of move on, try a different setting, different group, different game.
Yeah. So, for us to be able to do that, we're going to need to dig into some of the many reasons that can trigger this game ennui.
So what are some of the causes, man?
So, look, there's a lot of them. And we're not going to be able to cover them all tonight. So, in order to fit this into the episode, we're going to hit 4 main areas, and then we'll kind of drill into them a little bit.
Well, that seems reasonable. Would you like me to start?
Yeah, good.
All right, let's talk about mechanical. So the first place we're going to dig around is with the mechanics of a game. And there's a number of reasons why the mechanics can trigger ennui. Here are a few of them, just to get a baseline. So the rules fail to do what the game promises.
Yeah. I mean, I've had this experience a number of times. In fact, if this is the number one reason I get rid of games.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, for me, genre's everything. So
yeah.
If the mechanics of the game aren't going to support the genre, then for me, it's why am I playing this?
Good call, man.
I mean, for me specifically, All for One was the Ubiquity version of All for One fell into this spot for me.
Didn't do it for you?
It didn't have great. It didn't have great fencing rules.
I've never played Ubiquity, so
Ubiquity as itself, as a set of mechanics, I actually like Ubiquity quite a bit.
You ever played Ubiquity?
I haven't.
Yeah, me neither.
Hollow Earth Expedition.
Yeah, I know. I own the game.
Yeah.
I've just never got a chance to play
So
it.
Ubiquity, I like the mechanics of Ubiquity. What I didn't like was that in All for One, the fencing rules are kind of underpowered. And if your game is about supernatural musketeers, your supernatural rules shouldn't be better than your fencing rules.
It's true.
And that's actually what happened. I actually wound up liking Savage Worlds All for One better in terms of high octane musketeerishness.
So sometimes the rules themselves feel really samey after a number of plays. So just the repetition, I think, in the way the session plays, not enough variety, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, this is Savage Worlds for me a lot of times. Savage Worlds games just feel the same.
I mean, I love Savage Worlds, and I will play it in one-shots and in small doses, and I will completely love it. But every time I run a campaign of Savage Worlds, after 7 or 8 sessions, I don't feel like I'm doing anything different when I run it.
You know what's weird for me about this one? Dungeon World or Power by the Apocalypse games don't get me that way. Also, Fate never gets me that way either. Yeah?
But it's also part of how you guys run them. When I first started role-playing, I had a bunch of DMs that really were not very good. And it felt like I wasn't ever going to like D&D because all they did was have like a 5-minute scene and stick me in another dungeon crawl. And the one dungeon crawl was indistinguishable from the rest of them. But if I play D&D with you guys, it's nowhere near as boring to me.
Have we ever played D&D? We've played Dungeon World.
I played D&D with you 4th ed way back.
Oh, okay. I don't remember that at all.
Before this podcast was a thing.
Wow, that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
What about you, man?
For samey,
Yeah.
I mean, Savage Worlds does it. But to go back to your point about Dungeon World, I think the thing with Dungeon World is that it's because of it's the way that narrative ties to mechanics in that game is why it doesn't feel samey. Because the actual mechanics of that game are very samey.
They are.
10 plus 7 to 9, 6 minus.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't even actually need basic moves. You can just make one move.
That's World of Dungeons by Harper,
Exactly.
right?
So the point being is that it's not the mechanics that feel samey in that game because the narrative is so tightly wound to them that the 7 to 9 isn't really the important part. It's what you say about the 7 to 9.
It's true.
That's why I think Dungeon World and Powered by the Apocalypse gets away without feeling too samey. But like when I run a Savage Worlds combat, big set piece kind of thing, like, I mean, unless you're really reaching out to a whole bunch of different books, I mean, all the core edges are pretty much the core edges. Like somebody's got, somebody gets 2 initiative cards, somebody gets, no less than whatever. I don't know. I've always had that feeling. Like for me, the appeal to Savage Worlds will always be setting over mechanics. I mean, I like the mechanics, but then again, run it for 8 sessions and I feel like I'm playing the same thing over and over.
I think the only reason Fate does okay is because there's so many ways to drift it. I mean, I've seen so many drifts of Fate in different ways.
I mean, I think Fate encourages you. I don't even want to say think. Fate encourages you, even for core, to stretch the game by adding in different stuff.
Yep.
So you wind up rarely do people play core.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you play core, you're playing core, but somebody's added something to it.
Uh-huh.
Or then you're playing accelerated or Dresden accelerate. Like they're all they're flavors. But
core game is still the
see
same.
where core could get samey.
I mean, the core gameplay is still the same. It's always those extra modules that you add on that make it interesting.
Yeah, but I think the real interest in Fate games is when people do stuff with it. Like Rockalypse. I mean, Rockalypse is actually not that far off from core, except for the conflict mechanic gets changed up.
Yeah.
But that change makes that game feel very different. As opposed to, just playing straight, core fantasy.
Well, I've only read it. I've never actually got to play it. So, I mean, you folks would know better than me.
Yeah,
All three of you have
I've played
that
it.
game.
It plays, it's Fate. There's no mistaking it at the table. We're playing Fate, but it definitely has a different feel.
Let's move on to the next one. The game changes after a number of plays. So, hit me.
10th level Pathfinder.
Yeah, there's a spot in there's some spots in D&D that do it now too in the 5th edition.
In Pathfinder, that 10th level, and I remember I sat in on I sat in one Gen Con to talk with WotC, and they said that at 10th level, you are more likely to die from a failed saving throw than you are from running out of hit points.
It's true.
And that's a very different feel of game. And in fact, we posed this whole question out to the community, and somebody also mentioned that they have a preference for lower level D&D. I do too, actually. I will consciously end a campaign by 10th level, but in the past I used to just tank them.
I enjoy them up there sometimes, but they can get cumbersome in a lot of ways. So, you ever play a game that does that? Changes as you get up and as you progress through?
I mean, there was once upon a time where I did play just D&D. So I got that where 10th level, we actually had games that started at 10th level.
Well, at least the game doesn't change that. You just start there, so you're playing the same kind of game going forward.
But I've had that experience. I used to play, you might never have known this, I used to play Hackmaster back in the day.
I did not know that you've played Hackmaster. I've actually never played a single session of Hackmaster.
Yeah.
Straight up Hackmaster or Hackmaster Basic?
I think it was straight up Hackmaster. This was 14 years ago. So,
man, that's I can't. I know some people who've played Hackmaster. It's a game of charts, right? And just random stuff happens.
Oh yeah. There was somebody who critted and had his like rib cage torn out or something. That was one of the items on the chart. It's crazy.
You get that back in DCC now.
Yeah. I suppose we can move on to the next
On
one.
topic. There's a game that does something better than what you're playing. So it's no secret to anyone who's listened more than one of these podcasts that I kind of like the old school Vampire the Masquerade. But that's a little played out for me for a number of reasons. But one of them is the rules just are not that good. I actually admitted this at QCC. Chris is right. Now he has it recorded.
Yes.
But Undying would be the replacement for that. So when I played that game, and when Phil first showed it to me, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like everything I love about Vampire the Masquerade, put so much better because the mechanics actually make sense and support the gameplay.
What about you?
Dungeon World. I mean, it's hard to convince me to play. It's hard to convince me to play D&D if I can just play Dungeon World.
Uh-huh. I'm with you.
That's a tough one for me. That's anything that, like, when people are like, oh, let's play a fantasy role playing game, I'm like, let's play Dungeon World.
Well, now we can play Dungeon Crawl Classics though too.
Yeah, now Dungeon Crawl Classics scratches a very specific itch for me.
It's a very OSR-y.
It's also highly randomized. Like, that's part of the charm of that game is that it's like pushing a cart with no brakes down a hill. There's nothing I can do as a GM. Like, that thing just rolls down the hill, and whether people get killed, whether random weird tables happen.
I was thinking about that concept. And we should put a pin in that, because I actually have a counter argument to how there is a way to. It's random, right? Like, but in a game like Dungeon World, I'll just state this now. We can actually have this discussion later. In a game like Dungeon World, the game master has a lot of control after the roll happens. Mm-hmm. In a game like DCC, the game master actually has a lot of control before the roll happens. Mm-hmm. So that is where the difference is. So it's not as random as I think it is, as I think people make it out to be.
When I say random, there's no control of character generation.
Sure.
You don't get any say in that. Like,
yeah.
You're going to get the character that survives the funnel with whatever stats you rolled, 3d6 straight down the line kind of thing, random assigned equipment, all that stuff. You'll get a couple choices, right? You're going to get to pick your class or whatever. No, you're absolutely right, because DCC is still based on 3.5. So until a roll is called for, there is no randomization. Also,
when that roll is called for, the game master has the option to make a bunch of rulings to either adjust that roll or give bonuses and things like that.
Yeah, that's I don't. When I say randomized, I think the better comparison for me isn't Dungeon World to DCC. It's Pathfinder to DCC.
Huh, that's interesting.
Where in Pathfinder, all of your prep for success in the game is done in your character design, but you can't have that in DCC.
Yeah, but you can have fictional positioning before you make the roll in DCC.
Which is the thing to loop back around, that's the thing I like.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. I love it too. I was thinking about how random it was. I'm like, it is sort of random, but you can fictionally position. It's just where the game master has control over what can happen. Because the game master can't make it okay for you after the roll in DCC, but they can help you maybe not have it be terrible for you before
Bob,
you roll.
the pin that we want for the future topic is we want to talk about calling for rolls.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Because where a roll is called for procedurally has a very big influence on the game and how it's called for.
Yeah, and what the game master can do to assist or not assist.
Right, because for instance,
the players
we're gonna wander off. I'm already ready to do this topic. No, it's okay. No, it's a really good topic. I'm glad you brought it up, and I would say in probably 2 episodes, I would expect to see it come rolling down the line. We'll take it to the garage.
Yeah, that'd be a good one. All right. Moving on, because otherwise we'll get lost in a rabbit
hole. Yeah, we just
hole.
do this for,
Yeah, so the Ooh Shiny. So when another system catches your eye for the same or different reasons. So, Phil, why don't you tell me about every Gen Con for 10 years?
Yeah, man, for like 10 years. I mean, I got this. It took me a couple of years. It's been a couple of years now. I've got this shit under control. But, I mean, I would go to Gen Con, and I would, wander the aisles and buy a game and immediately no longer be in love with the game that I was running. In fact, August was like the death knell of every campaign I had, because it was like, oh, I'm going to go to Gen Con. I'm running this great campaign, blah, blah, blah. What's this game? And then I go buy like $100 worth of books and supplements for it, new dice, etc. And then I'd be like, oh, yeah, like we got to finish that Mutants and Masterminds campaign. Yeah, sure. I guess we could finish it. You guys still interested in playing this game? Or would you like to play this new shiny game? That kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was, I was really bad about that for a long time. I'm much better at that now.
I don't actually do the new shiny, right? Like, it's not a thing for me for some reason. Like, because it takes me so long to absorb a game a lot of times before I actually want to run it.
Well, I will hypothesize that I used to suffer that problem because I had so much free time that I could absorb a game in like 2 weeks. I have so little free time now that a fucking PBTA game takes me like a month to read.
Yeah.
So I think I'm better, but I don't actually know if I'm actually better.
What about you, Nikki? You ever have that issue?
I mean, I get to play what you guys have, and I will see games out there. You'll tell me about them, and I'm like, I want to play that. I want to play that. But ultimately, I don't really run a lot of games anymore, so I'm at the mercy of y'all.
No, that's okay. I'm pretty sure we're going to play Undying after we're done playing Masks, because I actually kind of want to play or run that game, so.
We'll insert my dreamy look for people who are reading or listening to this.
And then we're playing Numenera, so I'm just saying that, because
Nice.
that Numenera Kickstarter.
Numenera.
So that might be next year. Because it looks cool. We'll talk about that Kickstarter later. What's next, buddy?
Narrative, story, or setting. So the next place we're going to look for things that trigger our ennui. This can be a number of things, right? Like our setting fails to meet our expectations. We're no longer in love with that particular setting. Maybe you've played too much Ebron. Impossible for me, but for other people, maybe, Ebron no longer does it for you.
I mean, if we weren't playing Undying and Numenera, I'd be running. I have an idea for a Dungeon World hack for an Eberron game.
Yeah, see? Right. There's another one is there's no more stories left to tell with these characters.
Yeah, that happens.
Like sometimes you just overextend. Like your campaign's done,
That happened on my 4th edition game.
and then you kept playing.
We did, and it was okay. Like, I could figure out stuff, but it was
Right.
just, it felt a little forced.
Yeah, like you just get this feeling like these characters have told their story.
They also got mad at me because I instantly, like, they just won, and they're like, we want to keep playing, so I instantly created a terrible situation so that I could have another season of play. So, keep going, sorry.
No. I mean that's kind of the way you combat it, which we'll talk about after the break. The character group dynamic never gels.
Yeah, that's happened.
I mean, if the character group dynamic's off, or it either never gels or it comes apart, ennui will seep in. You will not be passionate about playing if you do not like what's going on around the table.
Can I tell you the exact opposite of this for me at this moment? Mm-hmm. Our Masks group, like, I love the way that group is shaping up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the characters are great, but there was when there's only 3 players, it was hard, right? That game was hard with 3.
Mm-hmm.
So the group was sort of gelling, but not really. Cause
We mathematically proved why.
Yeah, we did.
Mathematically proved why.
3 episodes ago, I think.
Covered that. We covered the math on why that game is better with 5 players.
Yeah, but with Glenn and Sean, I think it's going to be a much better game.
There's going to be much better.
All right.
The campaign goes in a different direction than what you were expecting. Ange tells a great story about this. I don't know if it's ever been on the Gnome Cast, but Ange has a classic story of where she set up a campaign and thought it was going in one direction, and the players took it in another. And when it happened, all of a sudden she was like,
Yeah.
like
She did tell that story.
yeah, she fell out of love. She fell out of love with the game because the campaign she thought she was going to have is not what was about to happen. Kind of back to the setting fails to meet expectations. The setting's no longer excited. Like, you've discovered everything in the setting. Conspiracy X is like this. Once you understand all the alien conspiracies in Conspiracy X, the game's not as exciting anymore. Because then when something happens, you're like, well, clearly that was the Saurians who did that. Or that was an Atlantean. It's no longer mysterious and interesting. And the genre's no longer exciting. Like, you just fell out of love with like fantasy.
Strangely, yeah, like that happened for me with D&D for a while because, I mean, I'm not sure if it was the genre or if it was the game, right? Like, But eventually, like, I'm like, well, and I guess this is a point in PK Sullivan when we argued about this one time, because PK likes to argue and not actually have a discussion. I just said that, PK. Shots fired. Anyways, the D&D is a genre, right? Like, D&D has a bunch of tropes that are associated with just D&D and not fantasy.
I mean, yes.
That was his point, and I for a long time I was like, I think you're wrong, but I mean he might be right, because once I started playing other fantasy games like Dungeons and World and Fate as a fantasy game, it became fun again for me.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard because mechanics are also tied in there.
It's true.
That's a hard one to pick apart.
It is.
But I mean, genre being no longer exciting can also be a thing for burnout. Like, all I've done for 10 years is play fantasy games. I don't want to see a fantasy game, that kind of thing. Like, you can burn out on fantasy too.
You certainly can.
But you can also ennui. Like, you can suffer ennui from a genre as well.
I did for a while on modern fantasy, because I read about 50 modern fantasy books in 6 months.
Yeah. You just kind of blah.
Yeah, I was just like, I'm done for a while.
All right, Nikki, what's another cause?
The group itself. When the people that we play with cause your ennui. So sometimes you have situations where your group's play style has changed, and maybe that makes it so that the game that you're currently playing is no longer a good fit for what your players want out of that game. The reverse of that's also true. Sometimes the play style hasn't changed, but your group has played together for a really long time and might be playing the same game or different games where people keep trying to resurrect the same character trope.
Yeah, that's a thing.
And it just happens over and over again. Colin would come home sometimes and he'd be like, oh, I saw this one person at LARP and he's playing this type of character or a new Bruja. And I was like, oh, is it this character name again? And you just you end up playing with people for so long that you know what their preferences are, and they just try to create those same kind of tropes into this system, into different systems, and somehow think that it's going to be a different story. And sometimes you just get bored with it. That's actually why one of the reasons I stopped LARPing in Buffalo. So sometimes you can get bogged down in the logistics of running your game, like scheduling issues.
Yeah, that happens. I mean, that happened to our Numenera game, right? Like, life fell apart for a bunch of people. That's when we started playing Dungeon World. Yay. Sorry.
My friend Dan actually hates trying to run games with all of us and got his own ennui because every time he would prep to run a game, something would happen at the last minute and he wouldn't be able to run. And he's just like, why am I doing this? And it wore on him, which I feel really bad about. But and then the last thing we wanted to mention with the group dynamics is personality conflicts. When you have so much of your personal out of character, out of game time spent trying to manage the relationships at the table on an out of character level, it just drains you.
Yeah, that happened to me. That happened to me with a couple of people. So
yeah,
It's happened to me before.
yeah.
It's definitely a thing. I think there's another one. GMs can sometimes get ennui if they're not getting good feedback about a game. I mean, the truth of the matter is, game masters work a lot more to bring a game to a table. They're often the default scheduler. They're the one who has to come up with what's going on. They prep the game, etc. And sometimes players don't always give great feedback. And I'm not talking about like even just thanks. Like, sometimes players, like, all they do is fight at the table.
Yeah.
And, or they fight with you at the table.
Now, how is that any kind of fun?
Right. And so if you feel like you are putting more work in than what you're getting out of the game, you're going to, like, ennui will slip in. Like, because you'll just be like, what the fuck am I doing this for?
That's true. It's very true.
I mean, I've had that happen a number of times where I've, almost tanked campaigns because of that, where I was just like, I don't even know why I'm bothering to do this. I don't think anyone's actually enjoying it. In fact, I've called players out for that. I've called players out where I'm like, why are we even playing this game? I don't think anyone at this table looks like you're having any fun.
I don't know if you've ever done that with me at the table, dude.
Bob's been witness to that.
Oh, yeah.
I've done that. If I read the table and it doesn't look like everybody's having fun, and it's happened more than once, then I'm like, clearly something's wrong. Why are we playing this game?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that actually happened to all of us at some points
That
for
happened recently.
for reasons that we'll talk about now, because personal is a thing, right? Like, finally, we may be the cause of our own ennui, or ennui. I can't believe I just read it that way. Ennui. So, our own emotional mental state can trigger ennui. I mean, depression is a thing, stress from work, health issues. I mean, I was depressed for a very long time, and it really affected me, and it affected the games that I was trying to run and play. I mean, it was a problem, a huge problem, and I kind of wrecked a lot of stuff for a lot of people. I ruined a lot of fun, and it's hard sometimes, but yeah, that's a thing. You have to be aware of it. You have to look at it. You have to try to disconnect yourself from it sometimes, and, well, we'll talk about solving it later, I suppose. So, sorry, I was getting into that. Anything else we want to talk about on personal?
No, I mean, mental emotional state's definitely a thing. I mean, sometimes it's physical. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you just, like, I've had, people get sick, right?
yeah.
I mean, like, you can't make it to a game. There's been a couple of times, oh yeah, I got snowed in. So, Chris, why aren't you at the game? I have like 8 feet of snow in my front yard. Dude, there's like a sprinkling, a dusting, and I take a picture. I'm like, look. And you're like, okay, never mind.
Yeah.
I'm just going to stay here.
I mean, those don't often trigger ennui, but
Yeah.
it can be something that, I mean, if you're having trouble scheduling a game, it can be a problem. But it can also be things like you have a job that's really physical.
Yeah.
I mean, you used to have that problem coming on the show.
Because I'd have to work on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
And I had my son, too, so sometimes I would have to leave work early to go get my kid, and then either I would come here and do the show, or I would go back and work and then go to do the show. And by the time, if I didn't go back to work before I came to the show, I'd have to go back to work after the show, so I'd be at work till 1 or 2 in the morning.
I mean, there was...
That's draining, by the way, everybody. That's
well, and in the summers when you would be stripping floors and moving like all the furniture in the school,
Yep.
like you'd be physically exhausted.
Yeah, I'd just be beat. I just didn't want to play.
It wasn't like you weren't
just wanted to
mentally
sleep.
fine. You just were like physically hurt and wanted to sleep.
Yeah, my body was broken down.
What about the times you have your mind on other things? Maybe it's not even necessarily just stress from work, but like you have a giant to-do list, personal or, professional even, anything that is kind of hanging over your head that's distracting you.
Yeah, that's your August, September.
Yeah.
Yeah, all that stuff. So, and we'll talk about ways that, one, we can take care of ourselves in those situations and also help each other take care of each other in those situations. So, Phil, what's next?
Well, I mean, I think that's pretty much all we want to do for reasons why. I mean, I think we've hit all the big ones. If we just go back and talk about it, we're talking about mechanics, we're talking about narrative, story, and setting, we're talking about issues with the group and personal issues. So, having covered the reasons why ennui can creep in, let's take a break, check with the chat room, and then let's flip it around and talk about what you actually can do when this happens.
So, Bob, anything from the chat room?
Yeah, we're lively topic discussion going through a lot of side stuff. Hobbs just jumped in. He said, "Wow, it seems like it's a little bit of a depressing topic." And I said, "Yeah, a little bit."
Because we haven't gotten to the fixes
But we've
yet.
got the fixes
I
coming
saw
up.
him say
it's
that
like,
we're going
yes,
to do the fixes.
are
Story
coming.
pacing,
So,
Hobbs.
Story pacing.
yeah, you got to lead the people along before you give them the
Story
carrot.
beats.
We're
man.
not rolling with the emergent right now. We're rolling into the
Yeah.
script.
But
It's just
that's.
prepped.
I think we're good. I think we can roll right on to the next
Well,
piece.
let's do it then. Let's talk about what we do about these things. All right, so you wake up one morning, you look at the calendar, you realize you have a sense of ennui about the game. What the heck do we do to deal with that?
Yeah.
So I suppose the first thing is we need to look at ourselves, right? Like figure out what is going on with us and why we have these feelings, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing you have to do is not ignore what's going on.
Correct. We have to admit that we might have a problem.
Yeah, I mean, there are people who will just be like, I'm going to power through this and run this game.
Yeah, I've done
Like-
that a few times.
And I think the first time...
Goes badly.
I think the first time that the feeling creeps in, that's not the worst. It's not the worst reaction, because the first time it creeps in, it may just be a bump, right? Like it may not, like you may have just come off a bad session and you're just feeling like a little anxious, like, man, that game did not work last week. It was kind of clunky. The characters didn't like it. I don't really want to run. Like, you don't really know yet. So I never knee jerk just want to kill. I mean, this is where my 4-game rule comes in, right? Like, I want to acknowledge I'm not feeling it, but early on, in the first 4 games, I also don't want to just be like, I'm not feeling I'm killing this game.
You know, I was worried that the Mask game was going to go that way because of how clunky it felt to us a lot of ways. But you all wanted to keep playing, and I was down to keep playing too.
No, I mean, I had to do the same thing with Blades. I mean, Blades was clunky as past the 4th. Past the 4th one,
it got markedly better after I quit. So there you go.
It became less of a struggle after you quit.
But that's also why it's important to kind of check in at the end of sessions to give players and yourself a chance to kind of talk about what's going on and if there are feelings out there.
Yeah, why don't we use that, if we don't mind, everybody? We'll use me as a case study for this, for Blades in the Dark, because there's a lot of things that went along with that, right? Mechanical. Like, we can go right through this. Mechanical, like, I didn't feel that the game was doing what it promised. And if I would have, like, and we had a billion discussions about that. Like, I also didn't think we were playing it in the way that felt like it was going to be okay for us, or for me anyway. Like, it was frustrating. I was frustrated constantly with the rules. So there's that. I thought the narrative, story, and setting was fine. Like, that wasn't a problem for me.
Yep.
I had a problem with the group in some ways because of one, how characters were going about playing the game. I didn't think that they felt or understood what was going on with it, and 2, like, I didn't think the narrative that they were trying to put forth was very good for the game rules. So that really messed with my head. Like, I'm like, are we playing this game or are we playing the story game? And because this game isn't necessarily a story game in a lot of ways, it's got a lot of stuff in it that can really mess us up. And I had those feelings. Now, my feelings were probably incorrect at sometimes, and it was problematic for everybody at the table, which made me kind of a jerk in that case. More than kind of a jerk, I was pretty much a jerk there. And then finally, like, the personal stuff. Like, I had a lot of stuff going on in my life that was coming out at the game table in ways that I didn't want it to.
Well, and you've got to acknowledge the group part, because there was stuff going on between you and I.
Yep.
And so there were a lot of struggles over how I was interpreting the game and how I was choosing to run it. That also crept into this. So, I mean, it was a myriad of things that led to it.
But I didn't do any of that, like asking those questions of myself. We were just playing. Now, if I would have, it might have gotten better.
Yeah.
And I might have, and eventually I just decided to not play because I was having too many issues with what was going on there. Which was better for everybody, because now everybody's having fun, which makes me pretty happy, actually.
Well, I mean, this also, when we talk about what to do when you're feeling ennui, so, we'll talk about this in a little bit about, sometimes you change the game, but sometimes, if it's you, that's a different thing, right? Like, if everyone's kind of feeling the ennui, like, that's a good sign that, something's definitely off at a game/group level. But in this case, like, everybody else was kind of okay with what was happening. Except for me. Except for you.
Yeah.
And ultimately, yeah, you took yourself out of that game. I was determined to try to make it work for you, and we wound up having a number of discussions at the table, but I'm actually not upset not upset you actually made that decision. It was okay. And I've been persistent. Like, I want to keep playing that game.
You should. It's a good game.
I'm kind of working harder to keep understanding that game, because I think that there's you and I have some disagreements about exactly, like, I think all the things you say are correct. I just don't think that they are the only things. But you also like to play, you also play games optimally, and there is an optimal path through that game.
There is.
That is part of the thing for that game. There is an optimal path through that game, which is to play the rank system, do jobs to gain experience, to climb rank, to up. That is definitely the optimal path through that game. But I think there are some, you can play that. You don't have to. There's flexibility in how hard you play that path.
That's true.
Yeah. Anyway, I mean, I've had that same feeling. I mean, I had that feeling about masks for a while. I had that feeling for masks for a while, and I had a number of times where I was like, all right, I'm going to go give this one more shot. And if this game is good, then I think I'll, if this session's good, I think I'll stick it out. And luckily it was. I mean, it had ups and downs, and so
Thank God I eventually got it under my fingers, and that there's an excellent group to play with.
Well, it was also a lot going on with that game.
Yeah, there was. I mean,
Yeah.
if nobody knows out there, we might have some social group dynamics that are, problematic on a personal level at times. That is a thing that has happened between all of us.
Yeah, and I mean that was a thing where it was like, well, I'm going to go to this game, and if this one isn't good, I'm taking myself out.
And I'll tell you, if you want to hear those stories, you have to find me at a convention and just ask me, because then I'll probably tell you. Ask Rob Aberzato and Eric Bonts. They know.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it's
Yay.
mic. I'm not sure if it's definitely not mic quality. It's questionable whether it's after show quality.
It's not
It
any
may
of
be
those.
a find Chris.
It's a find me at a convention.
Yeah.
I just told you. That's how you
Find Chris
figure.
at a convention, buy him and everyone that is with him a beer,
Yeah.
and then
Then
he
it's
can
story
tell the
time.
story.
I'll tell you stories. So what else can we do to fix stuff? Like when there's stuff that's wrong.
Well, I mean, I
Why are you
think
shaking your head? Sorry.
I mean that feelings thing. Like, trust that feeling, and then you got to kind of dig in. Like, you got to do some work and try to understand the why. Like, what don't you like? Like, why is this feeling crept in? Like, you at one point liked this game. Now you're, as Rob Aberzato said in the chat room, meh about the game.
Uh-huh.
Where did it change and why? What's responsible?
Yeah, and if you go look through those things that we talked about, the 4 things, then you have a checklist basically now that you can just go through. Maybe we should make a checklist. We should probably put up a PDF. Maybe I'll just do that. I'll take that 4 thing and be like, do you have game on Wii? Why do you have game on Wii? Here's your checklist. Go through and mark your game on Wii checklist.
Yeah. Score it, then above a certain score, drop out of the game.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. You have anything, Nikki?
I mean, I don't know if the right answer is just drop out of the game, but
No,
I
it's
mean,
not.
some of those things can be addressed. Like if the issues with the character that you have or with the group dynamic, like those aren't terribly hard to fix.
Well, sometimes they're not terribly hard to fix.
I mean, I had a player in a past life who was never content with their character build.
That's, yeah.
So
it's hard.
So by the 4th session, they were annoyed with the character they made because they didn't understand the game. They either didn't understand the game or didn't understand where the campaign was going, and built this character, but then it didn't work, and then was like, "Oh, this game." So I frequently just let that player tweak out their character. Like, I'd let him go 3 sessions, and I'd be like, "Okay, now go make all the changes to your character that you realize that you realize now you should have made before."
Well, it's about providing flexibility to your players so they can actually have fun with the game that you're playing.
Yeah.
Right?
I think
That's the fix.
Once I got really annoyed and told him that, like, if you change your character, I'm killing this character and you can make a new one. Like, I will murder this character in game.
You said that.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I was like, feel free, you can make a different character, but I will murder this character.
So, Nikki, you mentioned, if there's a group dynamic problem, like you can just, like, there's ways to fix that. Of course, there is. We have a conversation. We have a whole episode called Soft Skills.
Right.
That is about fixing those things.
Yeah. And people should definitely listen to that because that was a great episode. I was watching from the chat room for that. But I don't love suggesting to just take your toys and go home and take yourself out of the game because that fixes it for everybody else because you're no longer kind of dragging the table down at that point and it fixes the immediate problem. But I guess I'm a little sensitive to that because I did that and I stopped gaming for like 3 years because I lost the group that I was playing in because of some issues that were happening and I didn't have another group that I could just go sub back in. And so instead of addressing the problems that were there, I lost gaming entirely. And that was really sad. And it wasn't until, I came back and started hanging out with you more again that I really could come back and game more. And it's a part of my life and a part of my, the things that I need to be happy and content and stress-free as a person. It's actually a pretty core part of that. So not having that kind of messed me up for a while.
Yeah, we were only being a little flippant, and we probably shouldn't have been about the go home.
Like 50-50 on it.
Huh, interesting, because
No.
I'm always, like, I don't often just quit playing games.
No, but I think it's not games. Like, games is the fixable part. Like, I got a million games. Like, if a couple people in the group a game isn't doing it for, I'll just go get another one off the shelf. Like, that on Wii, I can fix without having to change personnel. Like, I can just be like, okay, we're not going to, like, as much as I want to play this game, you guys aren't into it. There's 10 other games I want to play. Pick one of these, and I'll be equally happy running it. But I think if your ennui comes from group dynamic or personal, you got to look a little harder about whether or not you should be with that group. If that group is not healthy for you,
Yeah, that's a thing.
then not playing with them is better than playing with them in an unhealthy way. Especially now when you could just go to some place like Gauntlet and go jump into an online game with like super awesome people.
It's true.
Like
It's very true.
super awesome random people.
We also are super lucky that we have like the people that are sitting here have 3 different groups that can play in. Like we have 3 different game things every 2 weeks that we can play in.
Yeah.
So it's okay if like one of those nights is not working. Like, I mean, we have that luxury, right? But if you're like Nikki and you don't have that luxury, maybe it's worth having that conversation.
I didn't 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean,
the
I
other-
didn't 5 years ago.
the
I had
other
one
thing
group.
The other thing is if you have one person, maybe they don't have that luxury, and if they just leave and they're like, gaming just isn't doing it for me, then they've now walked away, and maybe they don't have another group
It's true.
to go game with, and that fixes it for everybody else in the group, but not that person.
So, like I said,
It's on them.
yeah, no, like I said before, if there's a whole episode, it's called Soft Skills. It's when we talk about how to fix those problems. I mean, we could rehash that whole thing right now. I don't think we need to.
No.
The base idea is that you have a conversation, right? You
Yeah,
start a
sure.
dialogue and try not to be mean to each other. Don't be a dick, as I like to say, as like Will Wheaton likes to say.
I don't think you get to coin that one.
And needing to leave the group or change the personnel is definitely a thing that can happen, but I just don't think it should be the first thing that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Phil said, take a hard look at it,
Yep,
right?
exactly.
Evaluate.
Always have a conversation.
But that's why it's good to have that checklist, right? Then you can actually figure out what's kind of going on. What else are we talking about here? What other problems do we want to fix?
Well, I mean, so far we've just talked about like searching your feelings. Like, you
Yeah.
know, I mean, literally search your feelings.
We also talked about having conversations.
We did. So you could do nothing.
And that is a thing, yeah.
You could choose to see if you can ride out this ennui.
You did that with masks.
I did. I chose to. I was like, I think this game's going to get better. I will give it a shot. The thing is, though, when you're in that place, you owe it to the rest of the table to stay engaged. Like, if you've got ennui on the inside and you're choosing to ride it out, you gotta lock some of that down and not bring it to the table. You can't just come in and be like, whatever, I'm playing. Like, I had a player who used to do that, who was like, I don't really like this game, but I'm just gonna sit here and play it anyway. And it's
I want
like,
to play with you guys.
right, and it's like, really? Are you sure you want to play with us? Like, it does nothing about what you're saying or doing looks like you want to play this game. So you can't do that. You got to come in and just be like, well, I'm gonna give this game an honest shot. I'm gonna put it all on the table. I'm just gonna be me. I'm gonna have a good time. Have your reflection about it after the game. I mean, otherwise, what you're doing is just dragging the table down.
It's true. It's very true.
So if you're not going to do anything about it, and I've done this as a GM where, and I mean, this is my this is my 4-game thing. Like, sometimes game 3, I'm like, I don't think this game's working, but I can't give up on it yet.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I gotta, it's only game 3. I gotta come in and actually really try to run this game, and then I gotta try to really run it one more time after that. After that 4th game, I can sit and I can sit and contemplate, like, is this thing really working?
Yeah.
Am I getting spoons from this thing?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think do nothing is valid.
As long as you have an end point, right? Like, you can do nothing as long
yes.
as you have moments where you can actually check in with yourself and with what's going on with the game, so that you can get through it.
I'm going to put one caveat on that do nothing. If that do nothing, if your ennui is because of something unsafe
Then
in the group or in the game you're playing, then fuck them.
Yeah.
Like don't ride it out. Like if safety is the thing that's causing you ennui, like, oh, we're playing Undying and somebody's decided to play, Dracula rapey vampire. Like, and I'm totally uncool with that. Then
And why is the next
that's
card on the
not
table?
one right, and that's not one where you like ride it out and hope that character's like less rapey.
Correct.
You know, in
should call
future
that
sessions.
person out. Actually,
You actually should. I mean, we've had whole episodes on safety and things like that. It's definitely a safety issue. But if your ennui is springing from either direct safety or you think you see a trend in play that's heading somewhere unsafe, that's not one where you ride it out. I think that's when you engage it head on.
And if it's unsafe for you as a person too. So if you come into a game and you have at least, you know, some spoons and you're leaving with negative spoons and it's really dragging you for days after, at that point it's not worth going back giving it another shot that maybe next time would be better, until you figure out what is actually causing the issue and if it can be fixed.
hence checklist.
Yep.
I'm with you.
That do nothing does have a caveat. I think that do nothing is caveated by safety.
I mean, you can do nothing, but I still think you should run through the checklist, right? So you understand what's going on.
You absolutely should. I mean, I did. I mean, like for masks, like I knew where the ennui was coming from, but I also was then like, okay, well, I know where it's coming from. I also know what to look for at the table. Because sometimes you get sometimes you can get sidetracked by a fun night.
You can.
Like, the game was super fun. Not that any problems got solved, but we all just kind of, you know, punched things and rolled well.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes you're like, you know, you get distracted. Like, oh, yeah, like everything's great. Like, nothing actually changed. I just rolled really well that night. Mm-hmm. Or got some sick-ass treasure.
So let's see. We talked about group dynamics. We talked a little bit about personal stuff because it's about the checklist and being okay with yourself and then being okay with the people at the table. What happens if the game sucks? And that's what's causing you ennui.
Yeah. I mean, you got to say something.
Right.
Rule number one, you have to say something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't get to not like the game and then
Don't be
mopey
passive-aggressive.
about right.
Yeah.
Don't be passive aggressive and try to bury the game.
I just got to look, and she's not wrong. Nikki was like staring at me like, "Don't be passive aggressive, Chris." I'm like, "Okay, that's fine. I've done that before," and I know Phil and Bob were sort of thinking it too. So it's
No,
fine.
actually,
No.
no, because
When we think passive aggressive, we think a whole nother person.
exactly. No,
Oh, that's right.
When you didn't like Blades,
Oh, I stated it.
it was clear you didn't like Blades,
Uh-huh.
and we had to. I mean, we had to stop play and have discussions about it, but it was clear. Like it was like, you know, you were just like, I don't think we're doing what this game's supposed to be doing, and I was like, okay, let's stop and have a talk about that. That's okay. Like that is, I'm having a problem with this game and I need to talk about it.
Yeah, my passive aggressive comes out with the group dynamic and and the personal stuff a lot of
Right.
times.
I mean, I think Bob and I have the same picture, and I know an exact one of the times I lost my cool as a GM at a table was because a player was being super passive aggressive, and it was a corporation game, and Bob was the leader, and the other player was the hacker, and that character refused to do anything unless the leader told him because they were mad they weren't the leader. And they were purposely not doing things that, as players, we all knew should be done in the game. And I actually threw my dice. I threw them into my dice tray, but I actually hucked my dice into my dice tray, and I was like, I'm done. And got up and walked away from the table.
Man.
I was
And
like,
boy, was
Did-
the
wait a
rest
minute.
of the table
in my own house.
awkward.
Like, I
Yeah.
got up and went upstairs.
Did you just walk out of a game?
I walked out of a game in my own basement.
That's hilarious because you always are like, Chris is going to walk out of my game. Phil,
Yeah.
you actually have done it.
I did it. I threw my dice down. I got up and I was like, I'm going upstairs. I eventually came back downstairs, but I made a point. Like I was done with that shit, and that game was done. Like that game was dead on arrival.
Dead on walkout?
The moment I threw those dice, I was like, well, this campaign's over. Because how was I going to come back from that as a GM? Like the game that player made me so mad about the game we were playing and the way the game was set up. I was like, fuck that. I don't want to play this thing anymore.
I actually did that once. I actually stopped a game in the middle of a game because it's a 4th edition game and we were playing and it was that crew at Buff State and it was probably the 4th or 5th session that Dave Mondello was in the game and he started arguing with me about something about the game and the rules and I was like, I'm done. We're not playing anymore. I quit. And then everybody stopped and looked at me. I'm like, no, I don't play this game to be yelled at. You either trust me or we're fucking not playing anymore. And then it was funny because after that, Dave got real apologetic and he really appreciated the fact that he was playing in the game with us because he didn't really have a lot going on with himself at that point in time. And he asked if I'm like, I didn't kick him out of the group or anything like that. I'm just like, can we keep playing? I'm like, yeah, of course we can keep playing. We'll play next week. It's fine. Like, because I don't know. I don't want to be fighting with people at the game table. It's not my...
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's not a thing I want to do either. Like, when I'm running, it's like, trust me where I'm going with the game. And, if not, I mean, I'm okay to talk about it. I'm actually more okay to talk about it out of the game.
Yeah.
Like, if you catch me between games and you're like,
then we can have a discussion.
Yeah, then it's like, okay. And I'm not one true way either. So it's like, when I hear something, it's like, no, okay, I can either A, change that, or B, that wasn't where I was going. And sometimes that's that thing like Ange talked about where you thought the campaign was going in one direction, and now it's going to go in another, and you're like that wasn't the thing I wanted to do.
I did that once with a Dungeon World campaign.
Luckily that we
fixed it.
I mean, we were quick enough to recognize that we were
Yeah.
off, and put that game back on track where it belonged. Like, but that did happen, and I mean, I remember like I didn't have ennui from that, but I remember like those sessions. I was like, sessions are so. Which was tough because, like, every other session of the Airy Peaks is like, this fucking thing is insane. Like, I love this game. And then it was like, we had like 2 or 3 sessions of like, yeah, this is all right. Like, it doesn't really feel like Airy Peaks right now because we were no longer in the Airy Peaks. And actually, what happened with that game, which is maybe a thing we can actually segue into, we took a break.
We did?
We actually stopped playing that game for a couple months. And we were like, yeah, let's stop here. We didn't kill the campaign.
Nope.
We didn't do anything to end it. We just literally stopped playing.
After you fought the Devourer again.
Yeah.
Your friend the Devourer.
My friend the Devourer. We stopped playing. We went and played something else. I don't even remember what it was. And months later, we were making lists of games to play. And Dungeon World wound up on the list, and everyone picked it. And it was like, oh, I guess we're going back to playing Dungeon World. And you immediately were like, and we're going back to the Airy Peaks right now. And fixed it. Like
that we played the third act of the Airy Peaks.
But we did. I mean, I guess now looking back on that without even realizing it, we did have some ennui about the game because we took it in a place where we didn't think it was going to go, and we stashed the game.
You've been awfully quiet over there. Got anything to say?
Not about that, no.
Okay. About anything else?
I mean, I'm good for now.
Okay. Are we done?
I think we can talk about 2 last things.
Sure, hit me.
Yeah.
So, change the game.
All right.
Right? So, sometimes that ennui, like, you bring it up and then everyone else is like, yeah, this game isn't really, like, it's fine, or, nah, I haven't really fallen in love with this game or whatever. And so you can, I'm sorry, that's change games. Change the game is... we're going to put, like you did with Dungeon World, we're going to put this thing back on track. We're going back to the Airy Peaks. So you can actually make that correction and just be like, well, we jump ahead. We're all back at the Airy Peaks. And in fact, I think you had us make one roll.
I did. I made a custom move to see what happened.
Exactly. We made a custom move for everyone. We all rolled it. We figured out what happened. And we were like, yep, that's good.
Yep.
Like,
everybody was happy with that. It was satisfying.
Yep, we're back on track. And then the other one is actually change games, which gets us to that better play better games, damn it. Like,
play better games, damn it.
I mean, if you're playing a game that you're having ennui about, like a game system, it might not be the game system for you.
See said checklist.
See the part where, there's another game that does this better. Better for you. Let's be clear about that.
Of course.
We're not saying Dungeon World's a better game than 5th edition. We're saying that for some people, like me, Dungeon World is a better game for the way I like to play. Yep.
I like playing those games for different reasons.
GM Gerrymander is asking a good question. What about same characters, different system? That's legit.
It is a legit thing. We've done it with, we went from playing Underground to playing Fate.
Yeah. In fact, if anything, that was a game where we were like, yeah, these rules are all right, but this story's amazing. Can we just switch games?
It's still one of the better story arcs I've ever played.
That was actually a fun story arc.
Yeah, the beats of that game were super good. We should probably tell those stories again sometime.
Yeah, I actually really liked. I mean, I love Underground, our Fate version of it, I actually liked a bunch.
Me too.
Although I think I would do an accelerated version. I think it'd be fun to make approaches that are like street.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Street Crazy something something. Yeah.
So you ever run into that, Nikki? Change games. I mean, I know you've had like back in the day when you were playing before you started playing with us. There was you only had like the one group that you really played with. Like, how did you guys handle stuff?
I mean, before I started
Folks
playing
handle
with you guys, changing games wasn't really an option. Your choices were this vampire game that runs on the first Saturday or the vampire game that runs on the second Saturday.
Wow.
Yeah, so at UB, there's a whole lot of White Wolf that gets played, and it was almost exclusively vampire except for one
Werewolf LARP, right?
One werewolf LARP. And there were some tabletops, but the tabletops that were up there at the time were really hard to kind of get into because they were very clicky.
Mm-hmm.
So besides when you guys used to run the D&D stuff at UB way back in the day.
Way back in the day.
Yeah. There wasn't really a lot of options.
It's like 10 years ago.
Yeah, that was a really long time ago. And if D&D, like at the time, I thought I would never like D&D, so I never even looked at that as an option. Like I'd see people rolling out their maps and putting the minis down, and I'm just like, I'll go find another room. Thanks, bye. But
Hey, there's nothing wrong with dudes on maps. Everybody out there. The views of Nikki Lewandowski do not, represent the views of Mr. Mark.
I
Be
didn't
careful.
say
You
there was-
also were a I don't dudes on map kind of guy for a while.
I am?
You
I was.
returned.
Oh my
You
gosh.
came back around on that.
Oh my gosh, I didn't say there was anything wrong with it. I said that it was, at that point in my life, a trigger for me to think that I wasn't going to like the game.
Just being silly.
I
Sorry.
was biased and wrong.
Oh,
Okay?
wow.
Aw.
Interesting.
He was
Wrong. Wrong.
Are they done yet?
I think so.
Okay.
Okay,
I
we're
don't know.
done.
I don't have headphones in.
going along.
Me neither.
Sorry, Bob got me. He just whispered. He's like, we're going long. I mean, Phil didn't hear it, though, because he doesn't have headphones.
I have headphones in.
So where are we going now?
Now I think we're getting actually close to being done. So look, to wrap this thing up, ennui's a real thing. Like,
It is.
Don't ignore it. When you don't feel something about a game, that is your mind's way of telling you that your expectations for this game are not matching your experience. And when that happens, you need to kind of dig in and really understand what it means. And, you can use our future checklist to kind of run through that and try to find out where the source of your ennui is coming from. Once you know what it is, you got to make some decisions about what you want to do. You can ride it out. You can talk it out. So if it's, group dynamic kind of thing or campaign directional, you can talk it out and see if you can't have the game pivot in a direction that's going to alleviate that ennui. Or you can change the game, or you can walk away.
Uh-huh.
I think that pretty much sums it up, right?
Yeah, it's a bunch of good active things that you can do.
Yeah. So that game ennui is real.
So, chat room, what's up? Anything?
Yeah, we've got a comment from Ange to go back to identifying the ennui and stuff. She had a friend who got very meh about gaming because of a significant bout of misdirected mark word scramble.
Very nice.
Because of a significant bout of depression.
Yeah.
It's good to be aware when it's an internal external factor like that.
I know that feeling.
Yeah. So that's if somebody wants to just walk away from a game as one of the examples, don't just let them walk away from the game and not say anything. Say, hey, what's going on? Why are you walking? Have the conversation, because you never know. You may have just stumbled on something that could be very important for someone. Excuse me.
Anything else?
I think we're good.
Fantastic. Well, let's go to the social media depository. Phil, I played the bumper. I know you couldn't hear it, but
No,
I just wanted you to know I played the correct bumper that time.
Okay.
All right.
Good. I like that bumper.
Let's talk
It's
about
very
some
ethereal.
It is very ethereal. Let's talk about some current Kickstarter. So the Numenera 2 Kickstarter is running strong right now. And in fact, I'll tell you, it's at in one day, which really less than a day, it's at $234,910.
Is there really any doubt?
Then the question is, will it hit $1 million?
Yeah.
And will it be
That's-
bigger than 7C?
Well, I mean, I think that's really is it going to take the title for biggest Kickstarter?
Correct. That is the question.
Is it, funding wasn't a doubt. Monty Cook, for a long, Monty Cook had one of the first large successful Kickstarters. That's a company that I think, A, has a huge fan base, and B, has a company that consistently delivers high quality product. Like, there's zero risk in putting your money in this Kickstarter.
Yeah, I have no problem stating that Monty Cook Games creates the best settings in gaming.
Yeah, I don't actually even have to look at the Kickstarter to be comfortable backing this Kickstarter.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if I'm going to or not, just financially, but I like zero thought about it.
Yeah, man, I can't afford it. Like the stuff that I would want from it, and like I really want to play this game a lot again because
Yeah.
I really loved running Numenera. It's very much in my wheelhouse of like it's science fantasy.
Yeah.
and I
I
love that
loved it.
weird stuff. Like, oh man, it's so.
I mean, I'm
good.
with you. I mean, I had a what you call it? I had the
Your character was great.
I had a wonderful short story.
I can't wait for. I was going to do some crazy stuff to Bob's character because he was like phasey dimensional.
No, I mean, I love Numenera, and I mean, the only reason we stopped playing it was because
Mike
we
had a
narrated
kid?
we narrated ourselves into a corner, and then we were like, oh, we'll take a temporary break and play Dungeon World, and only to discover that Chris was gonna run the best Dungeon World game of his life. That's not on you. Like, how did you know it was going to be that awesome?
I didn't.
Yeah, and then it was.
Yeah, I mean,
So no, I totally would go back and play Numenera.
all right, so that's a Kickstarter. A couple of community chatter things, 'cause we had some things. So first off, that Rob Bush guy who played Dungeon World with me all weekend at the QCC, apparently Erie Day of Games is coming up. That is on October 13th and 14th. So if you're in and around Erie,
Yeah.
Rob,
Pa.
yeah, Erie, Pennsylvania, he will be there. He's going to be running some Dungeon World on Friday from 6:30 to 10:30, and Feng Shui 2 on Saturday from 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. It's super cheap. It's only $5 for Friday and $10 for Saturday. I've been there before. It's been a while.
I remember you went and played 13th
That's when I played
Age.
13th Age. Actually, it was funny because Rob Bush, he walks up to my table, and he's the guy who ran 13th Age for me. And if you remember, I
remember.
I panned that game. I'm like,
You did
I'm like,
pan
I'm
that
like,
game.
The game was great. I was dissatisfied with the game master. I
You
felt
did
bad.
say that.
And Rob is a great player, and I'm sure he's a great game master. And it was just a bad day, right? Like we all have bad days.
I so remember that.
It was
now.
a little awkward for me for
I
half a
would-
second.
I would think it would be a little awkward.
So
yeah.
it's one of the reasons I probably won't run some of the best sessions of my entire life that weekend. I was like, I gotta come strong. I cannot suck. But yeah, that was
That's
fun.
actually close for us. Like that's not a.
No, it's not far away.
That's an hour for us.
Yeah, and it looks like Alexandra, who was part of that group, she might go out there too and play some games. So that's neat. Maybe I'll make my way out there if I can. I probably won't be able to. I think I have something going on that weekend. If not, maybe I'll be there. That'd be pretty cool. All right, so there's that. Let's see, what else is going on out in the world? I have some things. Oh, JJ Lanza, he is leading the charge on keeping topics of chatter going. And this week, here was the sentiment. Tell us about your high-level / high-powered games. As a game master or player, what were your best and worst experiences? Do you prefer these types of games? Why? What challenges do you face with these types of games? What types of story arcs do they lend themselves to? And how do you handle prepping for these games? The only high-level real game that I've ever truly played for a long period of time was our Dungeon World game. But Nikki, you started playing games at 10th level, so how did that go for you?
I mean, I had fun with it. It was kind of crazy. We had, oh my gosh. It was one game that Josh was running. We had a character who somehow had the ability to make like simulacrums of our characters. So us, but like half the level.
Uh-huh.
And so we played ourselves and another character. It was weird and crazy and fun. And probably not something we should have been playing in a lot of ways for a lot of reasons, but it was a lot of fun.
Well, that's good. I mean,
Fun's what matters, right?
that's right. Absolutely. Especially if you can find the fun that works for you. You two, Bob and Phil, you played Iron Heroes.
Iron Heroes.
Is that the name of the game, Iron Heroes?
Yeah.
You guys were super high level when that game ended, right?
Yeah. Played
18.
Yeah.
Wow, 18th levels when you fought the Demon King?
Uh-huh.
Yep.
So how did that game play out at the higher levels? Like when you got like the 12th, 13th?
combat
A night?
a night.
Yes.
I mean, you
Yeah,
were
that took
throwing
while.
like a bag full of skeletons on the table.
I did that at low levels.
Oh,
like
okay.
at the higher level, it was still like 4 or 5 like significant NPCs. The good part for Iron Heroes was Mike Merles did some really smart stuff in that in the GMing book. He had made these template creatures that were scalable, like level
Oh,
after level.
that's cool.
So you were just like, all right, I need a 12th level, and I forget what he had names for them. Like, I need 2 of these 12th level things.
Hey, that sounds like a 4th edition design thing.
Yeah, right? Like, I mean, a lot of 4th edition came out of that game. But anyway, it was still a lot of prep. A lot of stat block crunching, terrain, because Iron Heroes did a lot with terrain that was actually really cool. But that was that was you either had story in a game or combat, but almost never both. Like at the end, like, and at the complete end, when Bob finally unloaded his bow onto the Demon King, we actually took a 10-minute break
So I could add.
so he could roll his damage.
What the heck?
Because
It was a
how many
crunchy
arrows
game,
did you how many arrows did you hit him with?
7.
I had 5 attacks, 6 attacks.
Yeah, you missed the first
I
one.
missed the first one, and then I drilled him with the other ones.
And then, like, half of them critted. There was not sneak attack, but you had bonus dice
Yeah,
for
bonus
tokens you could
dice,
cash.
yeah.
So we actually, like, stopped.
I'm not making fun of champions anymore. I'm just going to make fun of this game from
We
now on.
stopped. Bob rolled, like, all of his dice and added them up, and we were all, like, sitting around. And I knew how many hit points were left on it. And then I
the
think,
number, if I recall correctly, because it's in the back of my brain somewhere, I think was like 246 points of
uh-huh,
damage.
yeah. I had 239, but yeah, that's, like, in that rate. Like, he comes back, and he's like, oh, it might have been 246, and he had 239. And he's like, 239 points of damage. And I'm like, yep, that's him dead. Like, tell me how it happens. Like, let's, but I mean, we had to have a 10-minute break to have that, to have that moment. And as bad as that was, one of the other players was a 2-weapon fighter at 18th level.
That's like 7 attacks.
Uh-huh. And he had improved crit.
So.
Yeah, so like, it was a lot.
Oh, that means
He
those
almost
were the
killed
days.
Field, too.
That was the day of crit and confirm crit too, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, the way we actually wound up starting to do it was
You guys are making me sad right now listening to this.
well,
I'm like,
the way,
oh.
I mean, the way the one player did it with his multiple attacks was he had 7 different D20s in the rainbow color, and that was the order of his attacks from red on down. So he just rolled all 7 at once and then lined them back up and would just announce the numbers. Like he'd be like 46, 29, and he'd just keep going down, and I would just be like, hit, miss, hit, and I'd be like, okay, roll for, like 5 damages. It was a lot. It was epic, right? Like the storylines we prepped were world ending. Like the Demon King was going to open a rift to let the imprisoned gods out. Like that's what was at stake in that last battle. Like it was, earth shattering kind of shit. It was fucking tiring, and I would never do it again. Like I was like, well, I'm bound and determined to finish this game, and we finished it, and I was like, and that is the last time I'm running 18th level shit again. Like, that is it.
If I ever playing something that's epic like that again, it's going to be in a rule set like Dungeon World, where it's like
Well, we did that.
way less crunchy.
We did that thing already.
Yeah, or epic.
I'm not opposed to doing it again.
Yeah, I mean, I was fine. Epic level Dungeon World was perfectly fine. Like I, had
Felt
no
like
problem.
felt like Dungeon World. Just,
Epic level core, man.
Yep.
Well, it felt like Dungeon World, except that core,
you were all superheroes at that
he
point.
just rolls 10 pluses for almost everything.
Also felt like you had superhero like powers in a lot of ways.
I kind of did.
Yeah, you were Iceman.
Iceman by only getting people to tell me their like worst moments.
The best
in
thing
their
ever.
lives. Yeah.
All right, let's move on. So for more chatter, Rob Eberzado has been dropping in these do-it-yourself 30 questions. And there was one about making an apocalyptic survival kit from the stuff in the room you were in. So why don't the 4 of us do that right now in this room?
Liquor.
So there's liquor. So what can we use the liquor for? Molotov cocktails. We could trade it.
Well, I mean, it's also an anesthetic.
Gonna drink
'cause
it.
Drink it. Anesthetic.
It's anesthetic if it's high enough proof.
There's a bottle of Jack over there. That you can.
That's almost not enough proof.
Yeah.
I don't remember what the cutoff is, but you need it like above a certain 70%, so 140. Yeah, for antiseptic.
There's a couple of bowling balls over here. We can use those for bludgeoning.
Yes, we can. That's good.
Uh-huh.
What else?
There's some other storage. tools in
Fireplace
that bag.
poker. That's definitely a bludgeoning weapon.
Bludgeoning. We have enough mic cords that we can use them as a substitute rope. So that's a thing that would be useful.
There's some Chex Mix over there. That's going to get us through day like 1/2.
There's a whole fridge of beer over there, I think. Right?
There is, and dice, and games, and gaming books, and.
Well, we can't use the living room because we're in the dining room.
Mic stands.
Mic stands.
Right now can be used
I
for.
feel like this conversation would have been way more interesting a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
way more interesting.
well then. Anyways,
Before I cleaned in here.
so we have the table, and there's table leaves which we could turn into makeshift shields if we needed to.
Yeah.
That's a thing.
I mean, there are some candles in here, though they're kind of burned down. They wouldn't last that long.
At least we'd have them for a while, right?
Yeah.
What else? I mean, what could we do with the blinds? I mean, we take them with us and probably do something with them, right? Maybe, maybe not.
I don't know. They're slat blinds. Maybe are they real wood or are they like something we can't burn? Or something if we burn, we're going to die from fumes.
You can't burn them.
Yeah, okay. Can't burn.
So there's the tablecloth and the thing underneath it. So that's plastic also, so it can be used as insulation.
The
and
tablecloth's
like a
my
blanket.
cape.
It's your cape.
Yeah, I'm going like full Akira. Like I have this big red cape. Like
I was going to go for Liberace, but okay, we'll use Akira.
yeah, like the end of Akira. Like when he's like completely tripped out,
Well,
kind of.
We have these mugs and glasses, which are useful for when
To
we
drink.
need to
It'd be actually like useful to drink out of. Like,
we could
at
also
the end of
use-
the world. We still need these.
Yep, and we.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah?
You could, like, with the plastic pad on this and that glass, do the thing where you take unsafe water and boil it and stuff.
yeah, yeah.
There's this amazing show that everybody should watch. Best survival show ever. It's called Man, Woman, Wild. It's this guy who used to be in special operations for, I can't remember if it was the American military or the British military. And it's his wife who is a travel blogger or travel reporter, and they get dropped off in the middle of nowhere and put into survival situations. So it's him talking through the survival situation and them bantering back and forth as husband and wife. It was hilarious. It's amazing.
I'd watch that.
And so
That sounds like fun.
that's where I know all of my post-apocalyptic knowledge.
I guess
Survival knowledge.
What you got there?
Ooh.
Swiss Army knife.
Oh, Swiss Army knife. There you go.
It's gonna get us some distance.
I mean, it's funny, all this tech on the table, it's kind of useless in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, if the apocalypse occurs and there's no internet, I mean, then I'm just going to drink myself to death anyway. So
I mean, there's also some beef jerky on the...
Oh, there's
that'll
a
last for a while.
There's a bunch of
beef jerky?
books up there that we can use to burn for fire and whatnot, or entertainment purposes.
Or to restart civilization.
That too.
It's our literature.
Sometimes we need to, survive before we can restart civilization. So if we can't find things to burn, then at least we have something to burn. I'm not for burning books, but,
I think there's a lighter in the drawer.
Well, there you go.
So
There's
that's
matches in
probably
drawer
the
for
most
sure. I know
important
that,
thing.
right?
Yeah. So we have a source of fire for at least a little while.
All right. Well, that was fun. Anything else, real quick? Or are we good? I
No,
we're
I
good.
mean, the good part is, like, between us, we can make a new game.
That's true.
Like,
Between all
we
of us,
could,
we
well, I
can make
mean,
a
if
new
we,
game.
if we don't have any games, we could
We
still...
invent games.
Yeah, we'll be fine. Maybe we'll use the slats. Like, Bob, if we took the slats and broke them up, we could make cards out of them. You could write some stuff on them. We got a game.
That just happened.
Yeah, totally could do that.
Oh,
So we need a
man.
Sharpie. That's what we have to get out of here with is a couple
There's a
Sharpies.
Sharpies in the marker.
Perfect.
In the drawer. Yeah.
A couple Sharpies, Bob's set. And then we're entertained for quite some time.
All right, cool. So let's do some Patreon shout-outs now because we're getting to the end of the show. By the way, we have 86 patrons these days, and we have $328 a month coming in. That means we're getting really close to shaving Bob's head.
Oh my God, I can't wait. I've got the clippers, man.
You know what else comes out at 360, by the way? Like, you and Sunday have to record another show on camera.
Yeah,
With
that's fine.
Panda.
That's a
outfits.
thing, in Panda
fine.
outfits. And then I have to come up with a system-neutral dungeon, like a one-pagey thing twice a year.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, does it have to be just you? Because I would do one.
I mean, yeah, we can do them.
Yeah.
I don't want to put it on you, right?
No, it's fine. I
Misdirected
totally-
Mark Productions has to produce
Yeah, no, I
a-
would totally make one.
a system-neutral one-page dungeon
Yeah,
twice a
those are
year.
fun.
All right, so let's do some Patreon shoutouts. The aforementioned The Rob Bush, Remy Bilodeau, Noah Bond, the Archmage 1, Stacy Winters, Todd Crapper, Blaze A. Bear, David Walker, Wakesberg, or Waxberg. I always forget how to pronounce the last name.
Wax.
You're going to
Wax.
find out in a second.
Yeah, he's going to tell me because he's in the chat room.
Uh-huh.
The Knights of the Night Crew, thank you, Tom. Austin Lemke, Glenn Seiler, who is one of our awesome gamers that plays games with us, and then the secret opener of the show, Drew Smith. Thank you so much for being our patrons. Is there anything left in the chat room before we get out of here?
I think we're good to go here.
Fantastic. Well, with that, thank you everyone so much for listening.
If you are free Tuesday evenings, 8:45 p.m., 6:45 the Queen's time. Although today it's 7:45 p.m. the
She's in
Queen's
Kentucky,
time.
right?
She's in Nashville.
Nashville. That's where she is.
Come join us live on Twitch, where you can chat with other listeners in our ever awesome chat room for life, and then ask us questions.
If you cannot make it to the live show, check out our podcast each week wherever you get your podcasts, and take a listen to some of the other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, such as Down with D&D, Threats from Gallifrey, Vanished Insight, Panda's Talking Game, Cypher Speak with Darcy and Troy, The Gnome Cast, The Streets of Avalon, well, not The Streets of Avalon, Avanti whenever I get it done, or whenever Lee gets it done, with the Wednesday Evening Podcast All-Stars, and Hobbs and Friends of the OSR. You can and should also check out some of our brother and sister podcasts, such as She's a Super Geek, the Knights of the Night, and the always amazing Gaming and BS.
After you have searched the blasted wasteland of your soul and reached the center of your ennui, come leave us some feedback. You can reach us directly via email, chris@misdirectedmark.com.
That's me.
Phil at misdirectedmark.com.
He's over there.
Bob at misdirectedmark.com.
Over here.
Right there.
Nikki, don't email Nikki. There's other ways to get a hold of Nikki. We're not giving out
our
Nikki's email address online. Check out our Facebook group. Hit us up on Twitter. That's probably going to be the best place to get Nikki. You can find us at Misdirected Mark.
Yeah.
You can find me at DNA Phil. You can find Nikki at IT
Gamer Girl.
Robert M. Everson, and the Light 101.
Where you often get smooth jazz posts from me at least once a week.
Yep. Then stroll on over to where the real action happens, our G Plus community.
If you like what we do here and on other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, you can support our Patreon campaign. I guess when I say that, I really mean Pandas Talking Games and Down with D&D, because other shows have different Patreons and whatnot, and you just got to go look. Anyways, patrons get access to the after show, pre-production show notes, musical parodies, Pandas Talking Game bonus outtakes, D&D offerings, and other offerings when we can put them out, like our checklist that's coming sometime this week, and other special releases. And Nikki's cracking up for some reason. I have no idea why. I'm sure something funny just happened.
Yeah,
well, with
chat room
that, this
related.
has been a Misdirected Mark production, which is the media arm of Encoded Designs. Mic drop.
We out!